not just Wall Street. It's the energy companies. It's the military industrial complex. It's the drug companies. It's big money flooding Congress with campaign contributions and lobbying.
Hello and welcome to Planet Money. I'm Alex Bloomberg.
And I'm Robert Smith. Today is November 1st, 2011, and that was Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. You heard at the top, he was making the pitch for campaign finance reform.
Funny you should mention that, because Robert, today on the show, you know how people like Bernie Sanders talk a lot about the impact of money on politics. Everyone talks about it. Today, we are going to show it to you. We are going to show you the places where money influences politics. We're going to take you into the rooms where it happens.
This is the first in a couple stories we're planning on doing on the economics of campaign finance. We'll show you behind the scenes in just a minute. But first, as always, the Planet Money Indicator from Jacob Goldstein.
Today's Planet Money Indicator, it's 40. MF Global, that's the big trading firm that just went bankrupt this week, it had a leverage ratio of 40 to 1. Leverage ratio, what does that mean? Basically, in plain terms, this firm, for every $1 of its own money that it was using, it borrowed an additional $40. This estimate, by the way, it comes from the rating agency Egan-Jones, and a leverage ratio of 40 to 1, it sounds like a lot, and you know what? It is. That is a huge amount of leverage, of borrowed money.
And, you know, this helps me understand the MF Global story, because the big news was MF Global is going to go bankrupt because they invested in Italian bonds and Spanish bonds, which have not been doing well lately. But the key here, you seem to be saying, is that they borrowed all of this money. They weren't investing their own money in these taxi bonds. They took other people's money to do it.
And in particular, what happened, it wasn't necessarily that they got killed on the investment per se, but rather all these people who had loaned money to MF Global, they knew that MF Global was invested in European bonds, and these people who had loaned money to MF Global, they got nervous. They said, hey, MF Global, you know what? We want our money back. We don't want to be loaning you money anymore. So MF Global, it's not a bank, but this is exactly what happens in a bank run, when everybody all of a sudden tries to get their money out of the bank. And what happened to MF Global in the end, it's exactly what happens in a bank run. It couldn't pay everybody back all at once, and it collapsed.
And these are not FDIC insured. So, Jacob, I feel like I should add something here, because this does complicate matters. After MF Global had basically collapsed because of this run, regulators have found this discrepancy, really. I mean, they didn't keep track exactly of all this money.
Yeah, no, and there are reports, I think the Times broke it. Basically, there are hundreds of millions of dollars that are supposed to be customers' money, and they can't find it. So clearly, this is an important part of the story. It's not entirely clear yet what's going on, but we definitely should mention it before we get out here.
It does not look good. Thank you very much, Jacob.
Thanks.
All right, Robert. So today on the podcast, we're going to kick off what we hope will be a couple of stories on the topic campaign finance. And we're hoping to sort of go inside, show you how it works as a business.
Yeah, we're going to look at the people who give the money, mainly lobbyists, and the people who get the money, mostly candidates. And we're going to be looking at what all that money gets you. What does the marketplace of campaign finance look like? The return on the investment, if you will.
But today, we're going to be taking you to the place, the actual rooms, where the money meets the politics. And we're going to start it off with a guy who has been inside these rooms. He spent years in them. He was a lobbyist for 7 years. He had misgivings, and a couple months ago, he quit. Now he's trying to reform the system. But this story is from when he was still in the business, working as a lobbyist for a large industry group with a large PAC.
That's a political action committee, which is a group of people who share a common cause. They pool their money, and they use this to sort of amplify their monetary voice in politics.
Right. So you can think of them as basically you've got the Chamber of Commerce, and then you've got the Chamber of Commerce PAC. The PAC is what gives the money. So one day, our former lobbyist, Jimmy Williams, is calling on a congressman. And he's got two members of his trade group with him. These members also live in the congressman's district, and they are there to ask the congressman to support them on a specific issue.
They opened up the door, and the chief of staff said, "Can we talk to just you for 1 second, and then we can bring in the two constituents?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely, not a problem." Walk in, they shut the door. The congressman is sitting behind his desk. He stands up. He shakes my hand and says, "Hey, Jimmy, it's great to see you." And I said, "Congressman, it's good to see you too." He said, "I've put in 2 calls to your PAC director, and I haven't received any return phone calls. Now, why am I taking this meeting?" And he held up a piece of paper with my PAC director's name highlighted in yellow on it, with the dates and the times that he had called her to ask her for a campaign donation, and she hadn't returned his call. And I thought to myself, this is great, because I've got two of my guys out here that are constituents of this congressman, who are now going to come in here and they're going to make an ask of him to support a specific piece of legislation. And what he has done is he has warned me that if I don't take care of what my PAC director isn't doing, which is contributing to his campaign, then he's not going to help my guys.
Jimmy Williams says that this is the most explicit it ever got for him, but that this implicit bargain, it underlay almost every interaction he had with elected officials.
There isn't a single policy decision that's made in Washington, D.C. that isn't influenced by money.
And the place, says Jimmy Williams, the setting where the money does a lot of its influencing is something called the Washington, D.C. fundraiser, which is the subject of our podcast today.
Now, we live in New York City, and so we have some passing familiarity with big fundraisers. So when I think of fundraiser, it's when the president comes to town. They block off the streets, the limos roll in, the helicopters come in, and all of a sudden you see people in tuxedos get out, and then you hear later that in this fundraiser they paid $35,000 a plate, and Stevie Wonder sang, or Lady Gaga wore a new outfit or something. This is what I picture as a fundraiser.
No. So you got to get that image completely out of your mind. Those gala fundraisers, they exist and they're real, but they're rare events. They're reserved more for presidential campaigns. The thing I'm talking about is much different. It's below the surface, and it's arguably much more important. Okay, so these things happen all the time. There are a lot of candidates out there running for office, and they have to raise a lot of money. According to the Federal Election Commission, the first half of this year, candidates for the Senate and House reported raising a total of $285 million. That's what they have to. That's for the first half of this year. That's how much they have to raise.
And that wasn't just Lady Gaga.
Yeah, no. So how do they do that? They do it at these fundraisers, like this one.
Oh, and they handily put a sign, Congressman Larry Kissel's Barbecue. Please take elevator to first floor.
All right, yeah, elevator to first floor. You think that's happening at Obama's fundraiser? No. So that was Bill Allison. He's the editorial director at a nonprofit called the Sunlight Foundation, and they're a group that tracks money and politics. And they also get their hands on these fundraising invitations. This is the invitation for the fundraiser that we're going to right now. Here, you want to check it out?
Already this doesn't look like a presidential fundraiser because it's just a faxed piece of paper, really, and it says, please join us for a North Carolina barbecue. This is not professionally put together. Please join us for a North Carolina barbecue with Congressman Larry Kissel from North Carolina's 8th Congressional District.
Yeah, so this is a real fundraiser. These things are happening all over D.C. almost every day. So here's how it works. Congressman Larry Kissel, like every member of the House, needs to raise a lot of money. The average is about $1.5 million to get reelected. And so you see down there it says RSVP.
Okay, that's on the second page here.
Yeah.
Please RSVP to so-and-so and so-and-so. And there's a phone number here and an email address. This is not the congressman's staff here that you are emailing to.
No. So these are most likely fundraising consultants. They are the people in charge of helping Larry Kissel raise all the money he needs for his reelection. And they're the ones who put together this fundraiser that we're going to tonight.
Okay, so we take the elevator up. We're on the first floor. Who's there? Who goes to these things?
All right, well, let's find out. All right, and we're going to the fundraiser right now. Hi. We're, my name's Alex Bloomberg, and I'm with National Public Radio.
I listen to This American Life.
Oh, excellent. How you doing?
I recognize your voice.
I'm doing a story about the economics of campaign finance, and I'm in town for the evening, and I'm just...
I am not allowed... I'm not allowed to speak to press. So
okay, that's
let
fine.
Me get my boss off.
Okay, sure. All right, so the building we're in, it's your basic no-frills office building. Smallish lobby, mid-'70s construction. It looks like the kind of place that might house a DMV or something.
Whereas the president's going to the Waldorf Astoria, your run-of-the-mill congressman is in some nondescript room.
Right, exactly. And yet, the minimum necessary to get in the door here is $250. So that's if you're just a regular individual off the street, that's how much it costs you. If you're a lobbyist working for a client, like a PAC, it's $500. And the invitation makes clear, if you donate up to $5,000, which is the legal limit, you get a special name. They call you a host.
So how many people are in there? I mean, how much money is this going to bring in?
Well, I can't really see everybody from the lobby, so I'm just to set the scene. I'm standing in this lobby. I'm peering around the corner. You can see these people dressed in suits, holding appetizer plates and drink glasses. But people have told me that a fundraiser like this might have 20, 25 people there.
So ballpark for Kissel's campaign, he would be making anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000.
That's probably a fine guess, yeah.
Okay, so take me inside. Show me where the money meets the politics.
All right, well, bad news.
Communications director's going to come out.
Excellent, great. So the communications director comes out. You can't talk to me at all?
But these people love This American Life.
know,
This was
I
your
thought I was
in-card.
in.
They're public radio fans, and you can't get past the door.
I know. But don't worry, Robert, because there are fundraisers going on all the time. So like this night, September 20th, it's just a random night, but there were 14 separate fundraisers that were happening just that night alone. And that was just in the nighttime. These also happen at lunch, at breakfast even. Here, check this out. Here's another invitation.
All right. Upcoming events memo for Tuesday, November 1st. It's today. Senator Richard Lugar and special guest Saxby Chambliss. 5:30 a.m. This was this morning at 5:30 a.m. Is that a typo?
No.
This happens in the morning?
Yeah, I know. And I
Are
love
they
this
working
one.
out together?
No, and I love this one. This one, so compared to the other one where it's sort of you're cordially invited, it's a BBQ. This one is just all business. Who? Richard Lugar. When? 5:30 a.m.
Be there.
Yeah.
Bring money.
And like here's a couple, I mean, it's just fun sort of looking through these things. Like here's another one. So for example, check this one out. So this is a whole list of them. This one's for the 25th. This was just a couple days ago.
All right. For Honorable Dutch Rupsberger. Wait. Oh, wait. Lunch at the Johnny's Half Shell. That's like an oyster bar?
Johnny's Half Shell comes up over and over on these things. You can see it again on this page. Johnny's Half Shell. So there's these restaurants around D.C. that just have these rooms that are just almost exclusively used for these fundraising meetings. And Johnny's Half Shell shows up over and over and over again.
God, they're making a ton of money.
Yeah. Oh, and then here's another one. Check this one out.
Okay. Fundraising breakfast for Senator Barbara Boxer. And then this is what I love about this. It doesn't say that Barbara Boxer is a Democrat. It doesn't say how long she's been in office or even that she's from California. It doesn't mention anything about that. It says Barbara Boxer, Chairman, Environment and Public Works Committee, Member, Commerce and Science Committee, Member, Foreign Relations Committee.
Right. And that is because the committee memberships, that has a lot to do with who goes to your fundraiser. You know, for example, if you have business, if you're a group that's interested in what's going to happen on the Environment Committee, you might want to go to this fundraiser to try to get in front of Barbara Boxer. Same thing with Commerce and Science or Foreign Relations. If you have business before those committees, you might want to go to this fundraiser.
But it doesn't say anything about if you love Barbara Boxer, if you support her policies. It just says her committees.
Right. I mean, to be fair, you could go simply because you love Barbara Boxer, and I'm sure plenty of people do. But you also might want to go if you have business before a committee.
Okay. So on the night you were actually there were 14 of these going on, and they gave you the door at the first one. So what happened the next one?
All right. So Bill Allison and I from the Sunlight Foundation, we were trying to get a good sampling of all the different flavors of a fundraiser out there. So we wanted to go to one that was pretty different than Desmond Kissel's. So our next up, Roy Blunt.
This is Roy Blunt, and it's a fundraiser.
Roy Blunt. He's a senator from Missouri.
Exactly. And his fundraiser, it looked very different. First of all, it was at a restaurant called Art and Soul, and Bill and I stood outside and sort of sussed it out.
It looks like a very nice restaurant.
The one we were in was in sort of like a regular old, sort of like a little bit run-down office building. It looked like a just like sort of your basic office building. This is sort of like fancy. You got outdoor dining. You've got like a fire pit over there. You've got people with like stemmed glasses drinking drinks. Does that bespeak a difference between the fundraising prowess of Roy Blunt versus Larry Kissel?
I think it really does. Roy Blunt is he's in leadership. He's been a huge fundraiser. He has, he's one of the more important Republicans. He's on some of the key committees.
You heard we said he's on some of the key committees. This turns out to be really, really important, which committees you're on. So, for example, let's say you're on financial services or the banking committee or something. You probably have a lot of banks or insurance companies with business before your committee that are curious about the outcome of legislation before your committee. And so they're going to want to talk to you. They also happen to have very deep pockets. It might help you raise money to be on those committees.
Yeah, if you're the unlucky schmo on the Government Reform Committee,
right.
Maybe there are people lining up to give you cash.
I mean, I'm sure there are interests that lobby the Government Reform Committee, but they don't have probably as much money as the banks or insurance companies do. And Blunt, he is on a very powerful committee, the Appropriations Committee, which is a committee that basically decides how we spend, the federal dollars that we spend. So he has a lot of influence, meaning lots of people probably want to give him money, and his fundraisers are a little fancier.
Hi. We're here for the fundraiser for Roy Blunt.
Sure, I'll show you where that is.
Okay, great, thanks.
Wow, they think you're a lobbyist or something. You just waltz right in.
Yeah, I'm holding my microphone. I've got my headphones on, so we just walk through the restaurant to this little room in the back, and the door is cracked open, and we can actually see in. It's just this like really intimate little space. It's maybe 12 people around a table. Roy Blunt sitting there in the middle.
Trying to think if I should actually. Sorry.
And I sort of froze, Robert, because it was just sort of like. I could have just walked right in, but it was just like so intimate and so close, I sort of just froze.
We're actually looking through the door right now. It's just like a whole bunch of people sitting around a table talking.
There's a couple of bottles of wine and coolers off to the side, red wine, Pellegrino water, and they're eating dinner.
There's Mr. Blunt right there talking. There's a woman with lots of pearls.
And right around this moment, the restaurant manager came up and kicked us out.
No!
You can do reporting on the outside. I just can't have you inside.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's okay. Thanks.
Oh, you were so close.
Yeah.
So you're back on the street, and let's break this down. What we know, peering into this room, those people who are sitting around that table, this intimate gathering. I mean, what are they actually getting for their money?
All right. So if I'm an industry spending money on a lobbyist, I'm looking at this probably as an investment in something. An investment in what? What's the product that I'm getting? So a lot of people argue what you're getting is minutes in front of a congressperson. I mean, these things don't last long. You know, around that table is probably like an hour, 2 hours, maybe max. You got 12 people. That's like 5-10 minutes of one-on-one that you're going to get maximum. And then the price is based on how productive those minutes could be. In other words, how powerful is the congressman you're getting those minutes with? So check out the price for Kissel.
Okay, individual level, the minimum is $250 to get in the door with Congressman Larry Kissel.
Right, and then here's Blunt again. Check out Blunt.
Blunt, minimum to get in the door, $1,000.
Right, it costs you 4 times more to get into Blunt's fundraiser than it does to Kissel's.
And, you know, you say that it's minutes there, but I realize that there's also something else here, which is, remember that story from the beginning? If you want to show up at the actual office of a congressman or a senator, and you're bringing along your clients, your constituents, and you're bringing them along, it helps to have had this meeting beforehand. It opens the door again and again and again from that one meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you are a low-ranking congressman, you've just arrived in town, you're fresh-faced, you don't know anybody, you're not on a powerful committee, how do you get this money? How do you get people to show up at your fundraisers?
Well, one way is you just try to raise less money from lobbyists. You try to raise more money from people back home who sent you there in the first place. But then also there's other methods you can do. So look at Larry Kissel's fundraising invitation. Now, Kissel is on the Agriculture and the Armed Services Committees, but he just recently got elected. He was elected in 2008. He's not a very high-ranking member on any of the committees. So look, he brought some sweeteners to the deal.
Yeah,
it comes as a package.
Special guests is how he refers to them on this fact sheet. Congressman Colin Peterson, ranking member Agriculture. Congressman Tim Holden, Agriculture, Transportation, Infrastructure. And DCCC Frontline Chair Jim Himes, Financial Services Committee.
Right. So he's basically trying to broaden his reach a little bit.
So if you're interested in any of those committees, then it pays for you to go to Congressman Larry Kissel's fundraiser.
Right. But just again, to contrast this, Roy Blunt, his fundraiser was thrown by one of the most powerful lobbyists in D.C. The guy who was the host of his fundraiser is this guy, Jack O'Rourke, who works for a lot of financial services company like Goldman Sachs, for example, H&R Block. So even though Larry Kissel maybe had more people at his fundraiser, Roy Blunt, he has the right people.
Those 12 people, let's say, that are sitting with him are all connected to other folks. They can bundle money for him. They can ask their clients for money. They may control political action committees. They may be able to raise each of them, each of those 12 people may be able to raise $10, $20, maybe $50,000 each. And suddenly, that's a pretty important room of people if you're Roy Blunt. And that's the way fundraising works. It depends on connections. It depends on people. We are going to support you, Senator. We're going to get the. You know, there's the people who say we're going to get out the vote. There's the people who say we're going to write the checks. And these are people who can get people to write checks.
It's starting to sound like you never got into any of these fundraisers.
I didn't get in that night. I will. I want to. But I didn't. And I should say here, I did call Roy Blunt's office to find out who was there, to see if they wanted to comment about this. They told me no. I also called Larry Kissel's office. They didn't call me back. And frankly, I was surprised at how hard it was to get into one of these fundraisers. And one of the reasons was that I'd already gotten a congressperson to agree to let me go to one. So the next day after this night, I was supposed to go to Congressman Jim Cooper's fundraiser. He had a luncheon fundraiser, and he's a Democratic representative from Tennessee. He's sort of a critic of the system, and so he thought, hey, it'd be great for me to be there with him. We had it set up a couple, maybe a week in advance, but then less than 24 hours before I'm scheduled to go with him, his staff calls me all sheepish, and apparently once the guest list to this fundraiser got wind that I was going to be there, they all canceled.
They canceled.
They canceled. And so they were like, well, I mean, we do need the money.
So we need to revise this marketplace, because it's not apparently just minutes with the congressman. It is candid minutes with the congressman, unrecorded by Alex Bloomberg minutes with the congressman. I mean, once the microphones are there, I guess this little transaction will become... I mean, it's hard to ask for what you want. It becomes a little fake. You're posing for the microphone.
Yeah, and I saw that in action. I mean, especially just like this, I'll play this one piece of tape from our last visit. It was this other fundraiser I got in, and then the woman in charge, same deal, we'll get you the person in charge. The woman comes, and she stops 8 feet away from me so that she's not even picked up on my microphone.
Excuse me.
And then you can just barely hear what she's saying.
Hi. It's a closed event? Oh, okay. Is there somebody that I can talk to about what happens here? Can I ask your name? What's your name?
Thank you.
I'm Alex. I'm sorry. What's your name?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. So I don't know if you could hear what she said. I'm pretty sure when I said, what's your name? She said, I'm good. Thank you.
Clearly she's done this before. She has a sweet little Southern accent. It sounds like, I'm good, thank you.
I've never felt so toxic. It's hard not to take it a little personally.
So what do you make of this secrecy? I mean, it's not exactly like people are walking into this thing with huge trunks full of cash.
No, I mean, I don't. That's the thing that's so surprising, is that I think a lot of people, I have talked to a lot of people who off the record and off the record conversations, and what they say is a lot of it is, like-minded people gathering. The chances are that the people who are at Roy Blunt's fundraiser, they believe what Roy Blunt believes, and they want to give him money anyway. They also properly represent interests that he's going to deal with. But, that's secondary to, it is, a lot of it is just sort of like-minded people gathering. That being said, money does play a role. It has some influence. And that's what we're trying to untangle here. And I think when I talked to Bill Allison about it, what he said is the reason people don't want a lot of attention focused on this is because it's sort of like everybody knows that there's some sort of influence happening here, and that it's a necessary system, and they just don't want people looking into it. Like, both sides are sort of doing something that they just don't want people peering at.
It's one of the problems of how we perceive it. It's always the special interests, mugging the poor politician and stuffing money into his campaign account. And that's not the way it works. It's the politicians, as often as not, chasing after the special interests and trying to get them to give money to their campaigns. And there's a little of both going on. The special interests certainly want to give money to influence the policies, but the politicians want that money, and they actively raise it. They try to get people to contribute to them.
Well, if there's nothing terribly mysterious about what's going on in those rooms, then here's what I say. If you're listening to us right now and you work in a congressman's office, senator's office, maybe you're a lobbyist or a lobbying firm, let Alex Bloomberg in the damn room. This is the plan. He wants to go in the room. He wants to see what's happening. You have an opportunity to show it to him. So if you're hearing this and you have any access to the room, I'm just going to throw it out there.
I would love that. And I think we want to, as we said, we want to do a couple of these stories coming down the line. So maybe you have been in these rooms yourself. Maybe it's part of your job. Maybe you're a lobbyist or an activist who is trying to get FaceTime with various members of Congress. Maybe you're a campaign consultant and you set these things up. You invite people to these fundraisers.
Maybe you're a waiter at a catering company. You pass around the scallops wrapped in bacon, and apparently you're working at 5:30 in the morning passing these things. If you have been in the room, we want to hear from you.
Maybe you're the maitre d' at Johnny's Half Shell. Whoever you are, if you know this world, if you've been there, if you've seen it, if you've felt it, we want to hear from you. planetmoney@npr.org, or leave us a message. We have a special phone line set up, 202-371-1775. That's 202-371-1775.
Doing the same mistake twice. Making the same mistake twice. Come on over, don't be so cold.
What we've got to do is to have an honest conversation with each other about each side taking on some of their sacred cows. And frankly, that's what the American people expect.
Hello and welcome to Planet Money. I'm David Kestenbaum.
And I'm Robert Smith. Today is Friday, July 22nd, and that was President Obama, you heard at the top, talking on NPR's Tell Me More.
Today on the podcast, more crazy twists and turns in our story about the over 1 billion $1 coins that are sitting unused in government vaults.
And we'll tell you about a very clever scheme to get frequent flyer miles for free.
And we're going to go to Ecuador. Yep, all those stories are related. But first, the Planet Money Indicator from Jacob Goldstein.
Today's Planet Money Indicator, 21%. Most investors who hold Greek bonds are expected to take a 21% loss on the value of those bonds. This means that, yes, Greece is going to default on its debt.
Shocker.
Right. And this, of course, is according to the big Greece bailout package 2.0, which was announced yesterday in Europe.
You know, Jacob, Zoe and I were over at PIMCO, the big bond fund, and talking to Rich Clarida there, and he was saying that when the Maastricht Treaty was signed, setting up the euro, there's no provision in there for anyone defaulting or for anyone leaving the euro. It's like they didn't think about this. This is completely uncharted territory.
Yeah, even a couple years ago, you would never have imagined that a country in the euro would default. It would have been this total catastrophe. And, I should say the way this is set up, it's sort of a default light. They call it technically a selective default or a restrictive default. And bondholders have all these different options, and it probably won't trigger credit default swaps on Greek bonds. But still, it's a default. And, what's really striking to me is the response from investors is clearly one of relief. Interest rates are down not only on Greek debt, but also on the debt of the other European countries that are in fiscal trouble. And, this is partly because the governments of Europe, Germany and France in particular, are clearly stepping up even more and saying, yes, we're going to back this with our money. We're going to hold it together. But still, the day after this default is announced, to see interest rates going down, it's a sign, I think, of how grim things have gotten in Europe, where this previously unimaginable catastrophe of a default is seen basically as good news.
It's like the investors were saying, we knew Greece wasn't going to be able to pay it back. Now you finally said, okay, we're not going to pay it back. Here's how much we can pay. And it's sort of a relief.
Yeah, it's the relief of Europe accepting reality.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Robert, a couple weeks ago on this podcast, we told everyone about the results of an investigation Planet Money did with NPR's Robert Benincasa. We found out there are over 1 billion $1 coins sitting unused in government vaults. It turns out this is all due to a law that Congress passed and then sort of forgot about. The law required the minting of a new series of dollar coins honoring all the presidents in order. It also ordered the continued minting of those Sacagawea dollar coins honoring the Native American guide for Lewis and Clark.
And if you're like me and you haven't seen those dollar coins anywhere, you are not alone, because these have not exactly ignited the public's desire to use the dollar coins. And because of the way the law was written, there are way too many coins produced every year. Something like half of the dollar coins minted since the program began 4.5 years ago are sitting unused in government vaults. David visited one a few weeks ago. Over 1 billion coins. So many the Fed is running out of storage space.
The coins that do get out there into circulation do make the government money. But the coins in the vaults are a waste. It costs 30 cents to make each coin. So 30 cents times 1 billion coins, that's $300 million wasted so far. And we're only partway through the presidents. We're at Rutherford B. Hayes now. He's number 19.
And this is where the twists and turns start in the story. At the end of that podcast, we asked people, has anyone even seen a presidential dollar coin in circulation in the wild? And if you have, let us know. And we got this very funny email from a listener. Her name is Jane Liao, and she said she knew where some of these coins were. So we called her up. The subject line of her email, I should say, is, I have a lot of $1 coins, and I'm not a coin collector.
Well, my husband and I are travel hackers.
Travel hacking, she explained to me, is basically it's various clever ways of racking up free, frequent flyer miles. And the dollar coin trick to doing this works like this. The Mint, remember the Mint has to unload all these dollar coins it has. It has been allowing people to order coins online. So Jane says what you do is you go to the Mint website, you order a bunch of coins, and you pay with one of those credit cards that gives you free miles for every dollar spent.
And it's genius because you are ordering money on your credit card. Normally on a credit card, you would buy something and you would rack up miles. But by ordering money, it's not really costing you anything and you're getting all these frequent flyer miles.
And then you wait for your coins, and it comes in I think maybe a week or two. And they come in little cardboard boxes of 250, and it's pretty heavy.
Now, sure, at this point, you have a bunch of coins to deal with, but you can just take the coins to the bank. You can just deposit the dollar coins and then use that money to pay off your credit card, and bingo, free, unlimited frequent flyer miles.
Jane doesn't even have to pay for shipping to get the coins because the Mint is so eager to get the coins out there, it offers free shipping. And you can order the coins over and over again.
So you could just churn through those coins.
And how many dollars worth of coins have you ordered?
A few $1,000s worth.
When was the last time you did this?
Just a few weeks ago. So that's why we still have a bunch of coins sitting in our living room.
I should point out that this is one of a number of tricks that Jane and her husband have for getting miles, but it all adds up to some pretty nice vacations.
We're thinking of Greece and Istanbul, and we're hoping to do it all on miles and points.
Jane says she feels a little guilty, but she does try to take the coins and actually use them to get them out in circulation. She's actually gotten to like the coins, though I have to say it's a sign of how rare this is that people call her the coin lady.
We'll take them to the farmer's market. They're actually very convenient in San Francisco for parking, because the parking meters accept them. So they're making their way into San Francisco Bay Area.
Now, this may sound like dollar coins are entering into circulation when Jane spends them, but there is a problem here, which is that if Jane alone spends these money and no one else wants to spend them, then they end up back in government vaults. Here's what happens. Basically, Jane goes and spends a coin at a farmer's market to buy a peach, say. And if the peach guy who she pays takes that coin with all the rest of the money he makes and deposits it in a bank, that dollar coin is probably done for. It's going to end up back in the government vault because who's going to take a dollar coin out of the bank? When most people get money out of the bank, they take $20 bills out of ATM machines. And most people don't go to the teller and say, hey, I want all my money in dollar coins.
So what happens then is that the bank turns the coins into the Fed and asks for paper dollars instead. And the dollar coins sit in vaults. So the government at this point, it had to pay to have the coins minted. It paid for free shipping to send them out through the mail. And now it has to pay for storage. So as we were wondering how common all this was, we got another email from listener Tim Brooks.
I have ordered 2 orders, one for $500 and one for $750. Jefferson, Adams, and Jackson. 1 box of each.
David, this seems like a really slow way to get free travel. You know, I mean, I have one of these credit cards. You get, a mile for every dollar you spend? If you order 1,000 coins, you get 1,000 miles, and you need at least 35,000 to get anything good.
But Tim says where this is really useful is when you find a credit card that has one of those initial offers, like sign up for this new card, and once you spend $1,000, you get 75,000 miles. In that case, you order 1,000 coins for the Mint, and you're done. You've finished your initial spend, free flights.
Now, apparently Tim does tricks like this a lot, and it sounds like a huge pain and a hassle to go through. And in fact, his wife thinks he's crazy. But get a load of what ordering coins has helped him get.
I am going to Hawaii in a week. Basically, the latest haul with my miles was the round-trip flights for me, my wife, and my son. 4 nights in Maui in a condo, and then the inter-island flights between Maui and Kauai. 5 nights in Kauai at a condo, and then 2 nights at one of the nicest hotels on the island there. In addition, a latest promo basically gave you cash to spend for travel, so that'll cover all my baggage fees and my cars.
Now, David, I have to say, don't these people hate you now? I mean, they had a good deal going, and you talk on the radio and you tell everyone about this. I mean, isn't there a risk that this whole thing's going to get shut down now?
Caitlin, our producer, did get a very, very angry email. But the Mint has known that people have been ordering coins to get frequent flyer miles for a while, and it tried to stop it. I talked with Tom Jerkowski, a spokesman for the Mint, and he told me that back in 2008, the Mint found a handful of people ordering an enormous number of coins and started getting these strange reports from banks.
Dollar coins were being returned for deposit unopened and still in their United States Mint boxes.
So pretty quickly, the Mint figured out what was going on. You know, people were ordering coins and then just returning them to the bank.
People were using different credit cards, different addresses, they were using aliases to try to get around the system.
All to get frequent flyer miles?
All to get frequent flyer miles.
What the top abusers? How many coins were they ordering?
Well, there were some that were ordering up to 600,000, 700,000 coins.
Wow, that's a lot to carry to the bank.
That is a lot of coins. Do we feel a little bit violated? Yes, and that's why we aggressively sought measures to eliminate this, what we call an abuse. It's an abuse of the system. It's not right.
The Mint sent letters to the top abusers, who are also, unfortunately for the Mint, its top dollar coin customers. And the Mint set up these limits. So you could only order $1,000 worth of coins at a time, and you could only place one order every 10 days.
You know, when you first started to talk about this, I checked out the Mint's website where you can buy these $1 coins. And it is the saddest thing because on the website, right here on the front page, they basically beg people not to do what some of these people are doing. It says here, I'm going to read off the screen here, you play an important role in the coin's success, so please spend them. The more $1 coins you can help circulate, the better.
Did you see this other part where it says no returns?
They're going to return eventually.
So these limits the Mint set up, we know, though, those did not affect Jane Liao or Tim Brooks, and they certainly did not affect people like Ben Schlappick.
I'm not as heavy of a hitter as other people, I guess. I've ordered probably maybe $30,000 or $40,000 worth.
$30,000 or $40,000 worth of dollar coins?
Yes. Just last week I came back from a trip from Australia and Singapore and Malaysia, all in first class, just on miles, partly thanks to the dollar coin program.
Ben told me he orders as many coins as he can, 1,000 coins every 10 days. And we talked to him because he writes this travel blog called 1 Mile at a Time. And I was trying to figure out, is this common? How many people are doing this? I mean, the Mint has mailed out $284 million coins through the mail. How many people were just trying to fly for free? Ben thinks there are still a lot of people out there doing this. For instance, he says one of the popular travel hacker websites, Flyer Talk, has a thread with over 15,000 posts on it, all about ordering dollar coins to get free miles.
Now, 15,000 posts, that's a lot, but that could be the same few people over and over again.
Or one person.
Yeah, it would seem like the Mint might want to actually figure out how many of these coins are coming back, how many people are doing this scam.
Well, the Fed did a study, and they gave us a copy of it, where workers went around to the vaults, and they counted some number of the coins by hand just to get a survey. They actually hand-counted 60,000 coins. And in particular, they looked at these Native American Sacagawea coins because those were only going out through the mail order program. And they found that 60% of those coins were coming back to the vaults. They went out through mail order, but they ended up in the vaults.
Oh, I hear these stories, David, and I think this is just one of those classic bonehead moves by Congress. I mean, well-meaning, they really thought that the dollar coin could be successful, could help the United States, and then it just goes awry. It has a life of its own, and it's incredibly expensive.
After our stories aired, we did start to hear from some people on Capitol Hill. The head of the Senate Banking Committee, Tim Johnson, and two other senators on the committee, Jack Reed and John Tester, all these are Democrats, wrote a letter to Ben Bernanke at the Fed and the head of the Mint, Richard Peterson, asking basically how can the program be fixed. We've also spoken to staff on the House side who are trying to figure out what to do. Jackie Speer, a Democrat from California this week, introduced a bill she hopes will fix the presidential dollar coin program. Here, I have a copy of it for you.
It says, bill to amend Title 31 United States Code to terminate the presidential $1 coin program.
She told me she thought the best way to fix the program is to kill it.
It was a grand experiment. It didn't work. So it's time to, accept that fact and move on.
You're a Democrat. This would mean that the government would never make FDR coins or coins with Kennedy on them?
Well, as painful as that is, the fact of the matter is that most of those coins would sit in vaults across this country.
Speer was not in Congress when the initial presidential dollar coin law was passed. She says she's only actually encountered a presidential coin once or twice.
I only recall vaguely having this coin in my hand one day, thinking, is this really a quarter? And then trying to use it in a meter, and a parking meter, and finding out not only didn't it give me 25 cents worth of time, it gave me nothing.
So if the program were actually killed now, I mean, obviously they would stop making the coins, but that still leaves a billion plus coins sitting around in vaults.
Well, the idea is that those coins would very slowly be able to make their way out into the world over the years as old coins wear out or as demand grows, as the economy grows. And the nice thing about that is that it's a way to undo the damage. The coins in the vault right now are a waste of $300 million. That's how much it costs to make them. But if you can get them out into the economy, then you start to recover some of that money.
You know, David, I hate to pull this out at Act Superior, but I am Canadian. And in Canada, we actually have a dollar coin that people use all the time. It's got a little water bird, a loon on it, and we call it the loonie.
Are you telling me the reason the U.S. has failed to adopt a dollar coin is just that we didn't put cute animals on it, instead went with dead white guys?
Cute animals help. You know what also helps? Eliminating the $1 bill. I mean, that's what Canada did. They took the paper out of circulation, and guess what? People will start to use the coin.
Because they didn't have a choice. So, that would be an option here, except that polls show most people like paper dollars because they are lighter.
I mean, it is true. If you travel through Canada or when I travel in the UK, you have to distribute your coins between your two pockets. Otherwise, your pants sag on one side, especially those pound coins are quite heavy.
There used to be this argument that coins saved the government money because they lasted longer. But that is actually no longer the case. The most recent GAO, Government Accountability Office, report on this says that these days dollar bills last a lot longer than they used to. And when you do the math, coins do not save money right now. So it's hard to argue for switching to dollar coins, especially when people don't want them. Robert, though, I have one final strange email we got in the story from a listener, Rebecca Kays. It turns out there is a place where people do honestly love the U.S. dollar coins. It's just not in the United States. Rebecca, so you sent us an email, and it said the first line is, I know where the dollar coins are. Where are they?
They're here with me in Quito, Ecuador. I use dollar coins every day, all day, to do a lot of my purchases. Just in my wallet today, I have about $4 in change, and 3 of those dollars are dollar coins.
Rebecca teaches science in Ecuador, and Ecuador doesn't really have a functioning currency, so they use U.S. currency there. But the paper $1 bills, they don't hold up very well there.
The dollar bills get really trashed really fast because things here in Ecuador, your daily purchases are so much cheaper. Lunch, for example, is anywhere from $1.50 to $3. Taxis, the base rate for a taxi when you walk in, the cheapest you're going to get out of that taxi is for $1. And most of my taxi rides cost anywhere between $1 and $1.50.
So there's an enormous amount of wear and tear on every dollar.
Right. And it's not like when these bills get trashed that we can just send them back to the bank and get more. They just disintegrate. And then eventually it gets to a point where you have a bill that's so trashed that no one will accept it from you anymore.
I can imagine people in Ecuador sitting around staring at these coins wondering, who's James K. Polk? Who's Zachary Taylor, and why is he on my coin?
She says actually they get mostly Sacagawea coins down there, but I would guess they also wonder who she is, given that a lot of kids in this country probably don't know who she is either.
Is it possible that this is where the dollar coins have gone? Is this why I don't see too many? Are they all on vacation in Ecuador?
I haven't found a great way to get a handle on that. The population of Ecuador is like 14 million people, so they've probably got millions of dollar coins there. But it seems clear the country is not big enough to absorb the $1 billion coins that we have in vaults.
This is why we won't delay for your birthday.
Hello and welcome to Planet Money. I'm Zoe Chase.
And I'm Robert Smith. Today is Friday, July 8th, and that was the debut single from Robin Rihanna Fenty. You heard at the top, better known as Rihanna.
Today on the podcast, we'll tell you how much it costs to create a pop song like that one and how much it costs to make that into a hit song.
But first, the Planet Money Indicator with Jacob Goldstein.
Today's Planet Money Indicator is more than 25 million. More than 25 million Americans now fall into this category called broader unemployment. This is according to the very, very bad June jobs report that came out this morning. This group, this category, broader unemployment, it includes everybody who's looking for a job and can't find one. It includes everybody who is working part-time and who wants to be working full-time. And it includes people who want to work but haven't looked for a job in the past month. Broader unemployment, it's actually getting worse right now. Between May and June, the number of people in this group, it actually rose.
I've been watching financial television all day long, and they've been competing for the best word to describe the jobs numbers. And my favorite one is dismal. It just sounds like what this is, dismal. The regular unemployment rate is now up to 9.2. Dismal.
Yeah, this report, it's bad through and through. There is essentially no silver lining. It's way, way worse than economists were predicting. And, if you go back, at the beginning of the year, we had several months of really, solid, not spectacular, but respectable job growth. Then last month, the jobs report was bad. And, it was like, well, maybe this is just one weird aberration. But now with this report, you have 2 bad months in a row, and it feels grim.
Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, on to the podcast. It's the middle of July, and on the music charts right now, the competition for Song of the Summer is in full effect. What we're going to tell you about on this podcast is the secret battle that has been going on for most of the last year to create that song. It's the holy grail of the record industry. You know what I'm talking about. It's the song that's blasting out of every car with the windows down when the car is stopped. Like, remember 2007, it was this song.
How could I forget Umbrella?
This is one of my favorite songs of all time.
I love it, too. And then, of course, 2 years ago, the song that everybody heard, that even my kids could sing, was this one, 2009.
Mm-hmm. Black Eyed Peas.
That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. Tonight's the night. Let's live it up. I got my money. Let's spend it up.
They really ground you down with that song. It was impossible not to like it by the end of the summer, 2009.
I confess I do like it. But what was the one last summer?
Last summer was probably this song. Katy Perry, California Girls. You know the song. Don't pretend like you don't know it because you do.
Listen,
Okay.
I'm just picturing Planet Money listeners on the way to the beach. They put the top down in the car, cranking up their economics podcast.
That's exactly the point of the Song of the Summer, okay? So the field of battle for the Song of the Summer is strewn with casualties. Songs that just didn't quite have the stifling ubiquity that means it's a hit, like the Black Eyed Peas. We're going to walk you through how much it costs to build one of these summer's contenders. And we're going to use Rihanna's latest single, Man Down.
Man down, rum-pa-pa-pum, rum-pa-pa-pum, rum-pa-pa-pum.
This song has Rihanna's name on it, and of course it has that little Caribbean lilt to it. But dozens of people and lots of money went into making it and hopefully making it a hit. Now, Zoe, you have been dissecting this song for weeks now. I've heard it playing out of your cubicle over and over again through the day. And you're going to walk us through step by step how much it costs to make the song, and then our listeners can decide if it was worth it in the end.
Okay. So let's start. It might not surprise you to know the making of the song doesn't actually begin with Rihanna herself.
Shocker.
Right. Rihanna gets a bad rap on that, but it's not like Frank Sinatra wrote Lady is a Tramp. You know what I mean?
enough.
Like, this is not a new thing for pop music. Like, songs used to be manufactured in a building. It was called a hit factory, like the Motown building in Detroit and the Brill building in New York. And pop songs are still made in a factory, but it's a temporary factory. And these days you call it a writing camp. And at a writing camp, a record label hires the best producers and music writers in the country, flies them all into the same city, and drops them into the nicest recording studios in that city for like 2 weeks. And I talked to someone who was there when Man Down was written.
It's like, an all-star game. You get everybody in. If you're going to have the best of the best, and we're going to make the best records.
That's Ray Daniels. He's manager of a songwriting team called Rock City. Rock City was invited to the Rihanna writing camp in LA. This was March of 2010. And that brings us to the first cost of a hit song, which is the cost of renting all those studios that make up a writing camp.
Let's say if you got 10 rooms working. Every day, them rooms are costing anywhere between $2,000 and $2,500 per day per room. You got 10 rooms going, that's $25,000 per day.
Okay. I'm going to actually keep the tally here so we know where we're at. $25,000, and that's not including, like, you know, the masseuse and the nice dinner they go out to, right?
Mhm.
So $25,000 a day. And what are they doing this whole time?
Okay. Let's take the room where Man Down was created. It's a recording studio. Two brothers, Timothy and Teron Thomas.
They're the songwriters.
They are the songwriters. And they are matched up with a producer, which is this guy, Sham Joseph. The songwriters brought an idea for the song to the writing camp. They were sort of thinking about it. They knew it was Rihanna. She's from Barbados. And they were thinking, well, let's do this female response to Bob Marley's I Shot the Sheriff, right? Which is a good idea. And the producer, Sham Joseph, had come to the writing camp just with his laptop, with a bunch of beats, a bunch of music on the laptop, no words.
So there's no musicians involved at this point?
No instruments, okay? Nobody would play instruments, no instruments. So the songwriters and the producers in the studio. Sham opens up his laptop. He plays the track. No lyrics at this point. The songwriters are listening to the track.
They'll go into the booth and they'll hum the record. They'll just say a melody. Da 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 da.
And they start to come up with this little melody, you know, the part over the top of the music that you'll actually sing along to.
As they're standing there, they're listening to this, they're going, Man Down.
Yeah, exactly. It happens very, very quickly. Just listen to the demo that was created. You can actually hear one of the writers singing the songs.
And I took his heart when I pulled out that gun. Rum pa pa bum, rum pa pa bum, rum pa pa bum. Man down, rum pa pa bum, rum pa pa bum, rum pa pa bum.
They already had the concept, remember? So when they put the lyrics down on paper and recorded, it all happens pretty quickly.
They literally wrote Man Down in about 12, 13 minutes.
12? I love that, like, the whole creative process of a song takes place in the period of time it would take me to go get a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Yes, it's actually really hard to do that, to come up with these lyrics. So, and the other thing is they're not just writing one song. They have to come up with dozens and dozens of these songs, because at the end of the 2 weeks, Rihanna is going to come in, listen to all the demos, and pick her favorites for the album. Her record label, Def Jam, foots the bill for this entire process.
It had to cost at least $200,000. I mean, it was at least 40 guys out there. Like, I was shocked how much money they were spending. But guess what? They got the whole album out of that one camp.
Okay, so they write the whole album in that couple of weeks. And I'm just going to crunch the numbers here so we can keep track. The camp costs around $200,000, right? And there are 11 tracks on the new Rihanna album. Right. So that's 11 potential hit singles, which is great. And so you divide $200,000 by 11 and you get, I don't know, around $18,000. So for our example of Man Down, we can say that the expense of writing this song cost $18,000.
No. That's just for the overhead, the rooms and the dinners. The songwriter and the producer each get a fee for their service after the song was picked. So it's $15,000 to the writer and $20,000 to the person who did the music.
Okay. 18, 15, 20. I'm adding this up, and the total is $53,000 spent so far on Man Down. But at this point, like, there's no actual Rihanna on
it. Right. That's the money laid out before Rihanna even steps into the studio. And when Rihanna steps into the studio, she brings her vocal producer. And the vocal producer tells Rihanna how to sing the song.
I need you to belt this out. I need you to scream this as if you're on one end of the block and you're trying to talk to somebody 3 blocks away.
That's Rihanna's vocal producer, Makeba Riddick. And she didn't actually do Man Down, but she's coached Rihanna so many times through voicing chart-topping singles that I just called her up and asked her how much she costs.
It can start anywhere between $10,000 to $15,000 to go in and do a song.
And it sounds expensive, but picture the working conditions, okay? Makeba Riddick explained to me it's not just Rihanna in the booth and the vocal producer in the control room. In the studio, it's like a party is going on. There's 30 to 40 people there, you know, the artist's entourage, and people's phones are going off, and they're ordering in food. It's like a mini music video or something.
They'll have, you know, strobe lights. You know, they'll have incense burning, they'll have smoke machines, and they'll have doves.
Have you really ever seen that?
Yes, I have.
Doves, like the birds.
Doves.
like a Prince video or a John Woo film, slow motion doves flying to help you sing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doves actually help me track the podcast, so.
You're demanding that way.
Yeah, doves. But the thing is, the job of the vocal producer is to get the song done. And the label president could and often will just show up at 5 a.m. like, where's Rihanna's vocals? You know, are you done? And Rihanna doesn't need dubs flying around the studio. Riddick says Rihanna's very focused. And she wouldn't tell me exactly what Rihanna needs to get in the mood.
Okay, so for the tally, we will not count the bird wrangler. I'm just going to write down $15,000. And that's for the vocal coaching to focus you while the party rages around you.
Right. Then the song gets mixed, you know, the vocal and the music put together. Then the song is mastered in an entirely different studio. And altogether, that adds another $10K or so.
$10K, got it.
So it's a lot of money to make a superstar's record, but only superstars get that treatment.
All right, mathematics time. We have the cost of the writing camp, the songwriter, the producer, the vocal coach, the room rental, whatever birds are involved, an engineer mixing. My total here is $78,000 so far. And we have a finished song, right?
Okay, you do have a song, but nobody's heard that song yet. So you don't have a hit song, right? $78,000 is pennies compared to what comes next to make it a hit. Here's manager Ray Daniels.
A rollout of one record might cost $1 million.
Rihanna's here. Hey, Rihanna!
The reason why it costs so much is because you need everybody to move at once. You want them to turn on the radio and hear Rihanna.
Rihanna's live in studio 92.3 now.
And to turn on BET and see Rihanna.
Your reactions to Rihanna's latest video, Man Down. Rihanna!
When you look on Billboard, you look on the iTunes chart.
Oh my God, it's loud as #1 on iTunes right now.
What?
I need to pay to make sure the record is on iTunes. When you log on the Apple Store, I want you to see Rihanna first. All of that costs. I need everything to click at once. That's what the money comes from.
And he said $1 million up there at the top. $1 million. But, you know, before I add that to this tally, I mean, that seems like a lot of money just to roll out a record. What does it take? What do they do with that?
Okay. So to get the song into everybody's ears, you know, you need marketing. So you need billboards, commercials, banner ads on iTunes. You have to move the artists all around the country to different radio stations to do interviews and promote the record. And you're paying for radio play.
Payola.
Call it what you want. In order to have a hit song, it has to be on the radio. It costs money to get a song on blast on every radio station at the same time. I'm going to give you an example of how it works. How far the record labels will go to make a hit. This song is from 2001.
Of course, that's Jennifer Lopez. And, I mean, listen, that is a good song. I remember this song.
It's got great song.
Good hook. I remember hearing it on the radio.
Right. Well, one of the reasons that you know that song, one of the reasons that you heard it on the radio is because the record label bribed DJs to play it. And we know this from court cases, and I saw that in order to get that song played on the radio in Buffalo, the record label paid the radio programmers $939. I saw this in the court documents.
Well, that's very precise. $939 gets you airplay in Buffalo. And that's just Buffalo. I mean, imagine what it costs to get J-Lo in New York or on, an L.A. station or across the country.
Mm-hmm. So I talked to somebody who was a programmer back then in the early 2000s, and his name is Paul Porter, and these days he runs a media watchdog group called Industry Ears, but he used to be a video programmer for BET, and he explains it like this. The labels didn't pay, for one record. They would pay for a relationship with the station. The song request would come way later.
You don't get bought on certain records. You get paid first, and then people come back and ask you favors. So here's, for example, I go to New York for a weekend. I take the Excella up. I stay at the Soho Grand. It's a beautiful, luxurious, all-glass room. I get tickets to see the Knicks. I go over to somebody's house, pick up an envelope that has $5,000 in it. I have a great weekend. I go back, and I don't hear from the person for weeks. Then I hear about an R. Kelly video. It's a 10-minute video, and it was like a pop country song. It was not a BET thing.
And my darling, you would be mine.
And the song, some people liked it, but it's 10 minutes of R. Kelly, and it sucked to me. But the guy had been so nice. I had a great weekend. He never, ever asked me anything. And he said, Paul, look, I just need to get this played a couple of times. That's all he asked for, not major rotation. It was 10 minutes, and I played it.
Now, I know you have these stories of this happening in the past. Everyone's very careful to say, oh, this is how it used to be. But is it happening today? I mean, if Man Down is going to get played on the radio, and we already said it could take $1 million to do it, is any of that money actually going toward payola?
Well, this is where it gets complicated. It's fuzzy. Okay, 5 years ago, everything changed in the relationship between the record companies and the radio stations because Eliot Spitzer, before the scandal and before he was governor of New York, he was New York's attorney general, and he was a big anti-corruption guy. So in 2006, he launched this big investigation into payola practices, and he uncovered a lot. That's how I got the information about J-Lo. And he got all the major labels and all the major programmers to admit that bribes for song play had been rampant through the 90s and into the 2000s, and they all paid huge fines and set up new compliance standards.
But you just told me that the record labels still have these huge budgets for radio. If they're not using it for outright payola, for bribery, then what are they spending the money on?
Well, it's a little unclear, right? Paul Porter, the former programmer who played that R. Kelly song, claims that FedEx trucks are still showing up on Saturday mornings with envelopes full of $100 bills, but he didn't give me any evidence of outright payola that's happening right now. And Ray Daniels, our industry insider that we spoke to in the beginning, I asked him about this too, of course. And he says, since Spitzer, it's not so overt. He would characterize it more as a nice date versus prostitution.
Radio, you're talking about treating the radio guys nice and telling them, started off in the mix show, I need 75 spins a week. I need this station to play this record 100 times a week. You want me to play your music? Treat me good. It's like if you want something from a girl. What you want? When you want to get a girl, when you want her to be yours, what you got to do? You got to treat her nice. Take on the restaurants that are expensive, buy her expensive gifts. You got to treat her nice. That don't mean you're paying for her. That means you're paying to show her that you're serious about her. I'm not gonna call it payola, but I will say that.
There's something I just do not understand about this. That seems so weird to me, which is why is this payola even illegal in the first place? Why is it unethical to pay some money to advertise your album, basically, by putting a song on the air? I think about grocery stores, and cereal companies pay grocery stores a stocking fee so that they get good placement in the grocery store. I think about movies where companies will pay the movie producers money in order to put their products in their product placement. All this seems perfectly normal, but when it comes to radio stations, all of a sudden everybody's like, oh no, it's illegal. You can't pay money to put a song on the radio.
I mean, And that's a good point, but the argument is that radio is different. Elliot Spitzer, when he did his investigation, he said that pay-for-play is deception. So when a radio DJ says, we're playing the best music of the 80s, 90s, and today.
Yeah, our number one song today is...
Yeah, is that the best music? If those songs are just paid for, then that's kind of a lie. And Spitzer argued that it's fraud. Furthermore, the radio waves are officially public property. They are regulated by the FCC, and radio stations just rent the frequency. It's regulated by the government. Taking money to promote a song is not considered legally to be in the public interest. So if you do pay for a song to be on the radio, you're supposed to disclose it. Like, say, this song by Lady Gaga was just aired because of money donated to my Acela ticket from Interscope. Or, something to that effect.
I still think it's ridiculous because, these same radio stations play songs called jingles. They play the 1-800-MA, 1-800-mattress jingle. And they get paid for playing that song, but no, you all of a sudden play Man Down, take a little money. That's all of a sudden wrong? That seems kind of arbitrary.
Well, the other argument is actually whether payola even works, because a radio station is not going to put a lousy song into heavy rotation just because they're paid a lot of money to do it, because they'll lose all their listeners if they do that. Their listeners will change the station. And so radio stations are constantly testing this out, and they have market research groups testing Rihanna songs and seeing which ones have the potential to be big hits.
Speaking of big hits, let's see if Rihanna made it. Mr. DJ, Jess Jang, turn the music up.
Turn the music up.
Man down, rum pa pa bum, rum pa pa bum, rum pa pa bum. Man down, mama, I just shot a man down.
All right, it is time to total up the bill for Rihanna's Man Down.
Yes.
We got the writing camp, the songwriters, the producers, and the mixers. That's $78,000. And we add in the radio, however they get the money to them, the tour and the marketing, and the grand total to create and market Man Down by Rihanna is $1,078,000.
Oh, and the video drop.
Oh yeah, you forgot the video. We're not even talking about the fact that the video costing $100,000 to $150,000. This is money. Like, we're talking about money and for something that might not work.
All right, $1.25 million with the video.
Okay.
And the final question, I guess, is what did they get for their investment? I mean, how's Man Down doing?
Well...
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me after all this work?
To be honest,
after all this whole podcast?
Basically, let me put it like this. I've been playing it more at Planet Money than it's been playing in the entire country this week. I mean, it hasn't sold that well. Radio play has been minimal, but that's how it goes with the song of the summer. Because when I started working on this story, which was 3 weeks ago, Man Down looked and it sounded like it had a real chance. It was on Hot 97, that's New York's hip-hop station, practically every hour. But I got to tell you, when I sat down to write this story this week, it doesn't look so good for Man Down. There's more drops than there are ads on radio playlists across the country, and Hot 97 even has basically eliminated it.
But you told me that Rihanna sold more than 1 million albums, that the song is on the album. So can you say it's been successful in that even if the single didn't do well, it fueled sales of her album?
I mean, 1.3 million albums, which is how much she sold, is decent. It's platinum, but albums used to sell 1.3 million units in a week. That was before iPods. And I don't personally know if Def Jam turned a profit or not on the Rihanna album. But I do know that they're not making the kinds of profits off album sales that they used to, even when they do have hits. Because this Rihanna album had 3 smash singles, and it just barely made the platinum status. It's possible that the reason that they released Man Down as a single, which was the 5th single off the album, kind of scraping the barrel of the album, is because not enough people were buying the album to make the investment totally pay off.
So as you were listening to Man Down over and over again, what actually became the song of the summer?
You know what? I think it's Adele.
The scars of your love, they leave me breathless. I can't help feeling we could have had
it. And with this song, the album was selling really well, and radio took note of that. rather than the other way around. And that song kind of came out of nowhere.
We're curious what you think the song of the summer is.
Man Down.
It is not Man Down. But we want to know what you think at npr.org/money.
And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Zoe Chase.
And I'm Robert Smith. Thanks for listening.
Through every open door, count your blessings to find what you look for. Turn my sorrow into treasure gold. You'll pay me back in kind and reap just what you sow. We could have had it
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Audie Cornish.
And I'm Melissa Block. Food culture is always...
Well, all the kids, instead of calling him Davy, they call him Lardhouse. Even his little brother and sister call him Lardhouse. At school, they put this sticker on his back that says wide load, and they rank him out and beat him up whenever they get a chance.
when the night has come and the land is dark.
Hello and welcome to Planet Money. I'm Robert Smith.
And I'm Zoe Chase. It's Friday, January 6th, and that was a scene from the movie Stand By Me at the top of the show.
I know, it's a little weird, but there's a reason we're playing this cut, because today we are going to talk about lard, the processed fat from a pig in a can. Everyone in America used to bake and fry things in lard. Now, of course, most people use butter or olive oil or vegetable shortening.
Taste change. People don't want thick white pig fat in a can to make their pie crusts. But it turns out that lard didn't just fall out of favor on its own.
Oh, no. There was a concerted effort by certain individuals and companies to make sure that lard seemed gross. In fact, they had to invent a whole new method of marketing and advertising to do this. So, today, a mystery story. Who killed lard?
First, the Planet Money Indicator from the well-beloved Caitlin Kenny. Hey, Caitlin.
Hey, today's Planet Money Indicator is 200,000. There were 200,000 more jobs this month than there were last month. Where did the jobs come from? Well, retail, manufacturing, healthcare, food services, and drinking places, otherwise known as bars.
You're welcome.
The biggest increase, though, came in couriers and messengers. That's people who deliver stuff. I have to admit, these jobs, though, are sort of a good-bad thing because they typically disappear in January. All those extra people that FedEx and UPS hires to deliver all the holiday gifts, by January, they just don't need as many employees.
So this is actually very sad and also kind of annoying to me because when I saw the 200,000 number, I was like, 200,000, that is big. It's a nice round number. Can't this just be good?
No.
You're saying it's bad.
No, I'm not. Listen, it is a good number. This is a good report. Unemployment was at 8.5% in December. That's the lowest it's been since February 2009. And the other jobs that were added in healthcare and manufacturing, they're going to stick around. But the bottom line is, if you take out those courier and messenger jobs, the economy still added way more jobs this month than it did last month. So this is good news. We are moving in the right direction.
Okay, things are improving slowly.
Yes, exactly.
All right, thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Now, bring on the lard. So, Zoe, I was invited a couple months ago to something called a lard dinner. And a lard dinner was this whole multi-course event that was happening at this restaurant in Brooklyn called Bubby's. Ron Silver's the owner, and here's what was on the menu that night.
Fried chicken and lard. We've got baked beans with fat back, lard fried potatoes, and root vegetables that are baked in the oven in lard. We have roasted fennel that's been glazed with lard and sugar and sea salt, biscuits, and fried pies.
Fried pies. And the pie crusts are made with lard?
And fried in lard, yeah.
Okay, so that to me sounds delicious, but I know some people feel kind of ill just hearing that menu.
Yeah, we've sort of lost touch with lard in this country. You rarely see it on menus anymore. There aren't shelves of it in every supermarket. And even Silver at Bubby's was reticent at first to start using it in his kitchen.
Because I buy 3 or 6 whole hogs every week, and I was throwing this beautiful leaf lard in the garbage.
What's leaf lard?
Leaf lard it's the best fat on a pig, and it's a long tube of fat that is between the loin and the kidney in a hog.
Yeah, I can't imagine throwing that away.
Well, it seems funny, but it used for thousands of years. This was the thing that people cooked with.
And for Silver, this wasn't necessarily an ethical decision or anything. It was a business decision. He sells a lot of pies, and there is no way around it. He says it, and I got to agree, pie crusts taste better when they're made with lard. But putting lard into a pie crust is one thing. This meal really pushed the limits of lard tolerance for me because they passed around these appetizers, lard spread onto bread.
Like a lard tapenade, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was sitting beside a friend of mine. His name is Dan Pashman, and he's the host of this great podcast called The Sporkful. It's all about food. And he could not get enough of these lard spreads.
The buttery start and then the crispy, salty finish. It's just really a delightful experience.
I feel wrong. Like, I feel weird about this.
You'd spread butter on bread, right?
I would absolutely do that, yeah.
So why is spreading lard any crazier than that? Butter is essentially fat.
The longer we sat at this dinner and the more lard we ate, Dan and I started to rethink what lard was all about. I mean, it's not just that lard fell out of favor in America. Oh, people rarely use lard. No. Lard is loathed. Lard is vilified.
No, I think it's interesting that the word lard has become this sort of generally derogatory term associated with fat and disgustingness. If we think about Lardass, the character from the movie Stand By Me, I mean, you know, he didn't want to be called Lardass.
You know, it's funny because if you had called him Flaky Pie Crust, that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, who's going to argue with that? If you had called him Delicious Morsel of Bacon Ass, you know, that would have been lukewarm, you know. But, I mean, Lardass is something nobody wants to be called.
Okay, Robert, let's deal with this like a mystery story. So we have this once beloved food product, lard, tragically not with us anymore. Lard is dead. So who killed it?
All right. First, we should know something about the victim, about lard itself. It's white, it's creamy, it's made from pig fat, and people have been using some form of pig fat as long as there have been pigs.
Okay, so I'm picturing a colonial woman in her apron, and she's roasting her pig on a spit and just capturing the fat in a little tin cup for her cooking, right?
Yeah, I mean, that probably happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago, but let's look back 100 years ago, a simple century ago. Now, at that point, lard wasn't this homemade product, you made by roasting a pig. I mean, this was a big business. Lard, at the turn of the last century, was packaged and sold by slaughterhouses.
These people, when they, packed their pork, had a lot of lard left over.
That's William Shirtleff from the Soy Info Center. He's an expert on the history of oils and fats. Take my word for it. And he says commercial lard was essentially repackaging the stuff that would have gone into the trash bin. So it was a brilliant business. And this was not your friendly neighborhood butcher doing this. The meatpacking industry was huge at the turn of the century. Think Chicago, think slaughterhouses. And they marketed the hell out of lard. It was in every household, and there really wasn't an alternative. Like, nobody questioned using lard until a certain book came out, The Jungle. Our first suspect in the killing of lard is author Upton Sinclair.
So The Jungle, it's a novel about the meatpacking industry that came out 100 years ago. And although it was fiction, Sinclair famously did all this research into all the gross, weird stuff that happens in the meat industry.
It is a horrifying book if you read it. And the section on lard was so memorable. All right, give it to us, Zoe.
Okay. This is about the cooking men who cook the lard. They worked in tank rooms full of steam, and in some of which there were open vats near the level of the floor. Their peculiar trouble was that they fell into the vats, and when they were fished out, there was never enough of them left to be worth exhibiting. Sometimes they would be overlooked for days till all but the bones of them had gone out into the world as Durham's pure leaf lard.
Oh, it's so terrible.
It's so good.
Now, it is not clear how much of this actually happened. I mean, The Jungle was officially a novel, but it was this hugely popular book. And once you read that description, you can't unread it in your mind. People just freaked out.
Well, that's exactly the type of thing that Upton Sinclair wanted to get across to people.
Really? He wanted us to be grossed out by lard.
He definitely wanted to be grossed out by the entire meat packing industry. This was his agenda.
All right, Upton Sinclair. He had the motive and the opportunity to kill lard. He certainly had the audience. This was a huge book, and actually it prompted all sorts of food safety and labeling laws at the time, but if you think about it, there wasn't an alternative to lard yet, right? I mean, that's what we talked about. So Sinclair, he couldn't have killed off lard if he tried.
You couldn't have baked a lot of what you baked at the turn of the century without lard. There wasn't a replacement.
Right.
So the mystery goes deeper. Our second and third suspects are a candle maker and a soap maker, William Procter and James Gamble.
Procter and Gamble. Nice.
Now, by the end of the 19th century, William and James had already passed away. But their company, Procter & Gamble, was going strong. In fact, it was really big. But it didn't make any food products. It made the same stuff that William and James used to make, candles and soap. Now, in order to make candles and soap, Procter & Gamble used cottonseed oil. Cottonseed oil you get from squeezing the little seeds that you pick out of the cotton before it becomes your clothing. But there was this problem.
Yes.
Turn of the century.
The light bulb.
The light bulb. The candle business was not looking like a good investment in the 20th century. And that left Procter & Gamble with a whole lot of cottonseed oil.
Okay, so we're in the same situation that the meatpacking industry was in just a little, a few decades earlier. They had to get rid of its pork fat, and Procter & Gamble had to unload cottonseed oil, right?
And they had a lot of it, and this was a problem. The answer, though, came from an unlikely visitor to Procter & Gamble headquarters in 1907. It was this German chemist named E.C. Kaiser, and he shows up in Cincinnati. He goes to Procter & Gamble headquarters, he meets with the officials, and he holds out his hand. And in it is a solid white ball, about the size of a tennis ball. I mean, it actually looks like lard, but it is not lard. And he says, this right here, this is cottonseed oil.
Talk about a eureka moment, right? So he had turned a liquid oil into a solid.
This was the answer. The cottonseed stuff was white like lard, it cooked like lard, but there was no pig involved. It was all vegetable. Now, the process that Kaiser helped perfect was something called hydrogenation, as in partially hydrogenated vegetable oil.
You can draw a clear line between the invention of hydrogenation and Crisco.
We'll get to that brand name in a moment. But first, they had to perfect this product because it was apparently so hard you could hammer tacks with it. So this book describes how Procter & Gamble had this secret facility they built outside of Cincinnati, and it had frosted windows, and nobody knew what was going on inside. And they started experimenting with this hydrogenation process. And 2 years later, by 1909, they had a product. And they had a name for this new solid vegetable oil fat in a can. Crispo.
I don't think that's right, Robert.
No. That was actually the first name, Crispo. But it turns out that someone else had it. There was some sort of copyright thing. Anyway, they came up with a better name, Christ, which, if you look at the way it's written, looks a little bit too much like Christ. So the story goes. So they combined their two failed names into Crisco. Lard, for the first time, had a real competitor.
This isn't yet, though, some kind of evil conspiracy to kill lard. What this is economics, right? It's a very popular product. Somebody else needs a competitor. People change over because they like it more, it's better, or whatever.
It wasn't quite that easy because when you think about it, Crisco had to change everything people thought about fat. Crisco was made in a lab. And that sounds normal now, but back then we did not eat things made in labs. We only ate things that our grandparents ate. So 100 years ago, Crisco seemed weird, and lard was the natural, normal product you would use. So in order to get people to try Crisco, Procter & Gamble had to really change people's heads. And luckily, people were still thinking about Upton Sinclair's book and the people who fell on the lard. So this was their moment. And they milked the negative associations of lard for all it was worth. Here, I'm going to show you some quotes from a cookbook that Crisco put out.
All right. The shortening used in all baked foods, therefore, should be just as pure and wholesome as if you were eating butter on bread. Okay.
See how they did that? Pure and wholesome. When you read this thing, they use the words pure and wholesome over and over and over again. It's digestible. It's clean. Here's another quote. The stomach welcomes Crisco and carries forward its digestion with ease. So, you see, Procter & Gamble was ingenious. And they did another great thing. They sent out samples of Crisco to domestic science experts and hospitals. And then they later advertised the fact that hospitals and schools use Crisco. and now I'm quoting again from the cookbook, where purity and digestibility are of vital importance.
Well, it sounds like a didactic cookbook, but it also just sounds like a basic advertising campaign, right?
Well, yeah, because that's the way advertising is done now. But at the time, all this stuff was pretty new. I mean, they revolutionized a field that we now call branding. As good as their products may be, they were fantastic at selling them, at marketing, advertising, and branding. In fact, Procter & Gamble was an early adopter of radio advertising, and they pushed the hell out of Crisco.
This is Sandy Becker saying, keep cooking with Crisco. It's all vegetable. It's digestible.
And then they did the same thing on TV. Lard did not stand a chance. Now, Shirley, our food guide says that lard didn't die overnight. People didn't flock away from it. But there was a slow poisoning of public opinion.
By relentless advertising, you gradually change the culture.
And I should make this clear. There are still plenty of places in the world and plenty of cultures that still use lard. I mean, if you have a delicious tamale here in New York City, the odds are it is so good. I won't tell you this, but it is so good because of whipped lard. But here in the United States, mostly the vegetable products, the vegetable oils, the vegetable fats won. Lard became an insult.
Lard lived by the marketing and died by the marketing.
Elementary. Zoe Chase. Elementary.
But Robert, the thing is this really so bad? I mean, that's the business. And lard actually isn't really good for you. It's filled with saturated fat, so what?
Yeah, that's exactly what my wife said when I told her I was going to a lard dinner. But, as the story turns out in the end, I think everyone knows this, the pure and unadulterated Crisco didn't turn out to be so good for you either. That whole partial hydrogenation thing the German guy came up with created trans fats, which it turns out clogged your arteries. And Crisco ended up having to go back to the lab and take those trans fats out.
So how did you feel after the lard dinner? Was it delicious?
I felt fine, but as pro-lard, as maybe you can tell, I did not eat large portions. I was still a little bit afraid. I mean, this is the marketing effect on me. And, I was sitting next to a guy, Samuel Cohen, who is a doctor. Okay, he's not really a doctor, but he's almost a doctor.
As a second-year medical student, my almost-to-be official opinion about lard is that lard is no worse for you than any other kind of animal fat. It's similar to butter, similar to bacon, but in general, it's really everything in moderation. As long as you're not eating tubs of lard all the time, it's not really any worse for you than anything else.
And I should say that he does add that olive oil is way better for you. You should eat a balanced diet, blah, blah, blah. He's going to be a great doctor. But I got to tell you, lard is having a comeback. I'm starting to see lard, lard fried potatoes on very fancy menus around New York. I don't know if it's gotten across the country. I don't know if it's going to get to where they're healthy in Los Angeles. But this, I feel, is the beginning of a new story of lard. It's become kind of a little bit of a gourmet item.
Bring it. As always, send us your thoughts, your impressions, your recipes. Send us an email at planetmoney@npr.org. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Zoe Chase.
And I'm Robert Smith. Thanks for listening.
You know what the price of a Coca-Cola was in 1886? A nickel. In 1900, still a nickel. 10 years later, 1910, a nickel. 1920, a nickel. 1930, a nickel. 1940, a nickel. 1950, a nickel. As late as 1959, you could buy a 6.5-ounce bottle of Coca-Cola for 1 nickel. And for economists, this is a total freak of nature kind of thing. Prices, you can read in any textbook, are supposed to go up and down. The price of gasoline goes up and down depending on how much is available, how many people want it, how hard it is to get out of the ground. The price of a television depends on how expensive the components are to make, and the price of labor. The price of butter goes up and down. Corn, cars, houses, everything. Prices change. They adjust. It's the basic mechanism for how markets work. And yet, for 70 years, you could buy a Coke for 5 cents.
Coca-Cola is the best drink in the land. Men, women, children the country over drink more Coca-Cola than any other one drink. It's the 5-cent drink of the nation. Proof that Coca-Cola quenches your thirst, refreshes your spirits, thrills your taste as nothing else does. Get that handy 6-bottle carton now.
Today, the strange story of nickel Coke, why it happened, what it says about the textbooks, and us. Hello and welcome to Planet Money. I'm David Kestenbaum. It's not a secret that Coke cost a nickel for so long. You can go to any antique store and see the old signs. If you go to the Coca-Cola Museum in Atlanta, the tour guide will tell you. And normally people on the tour will just nod. Yeah, things used to be cheap. But one day, a guy named Daniel Levy took his kids to that museum. It's called the World of Coca-Cola. And so his family's on this tour, and the tour guide just mentions this nickel Coke thing. And Levy thinks, wait, what?
When I heard that, I said, can you say that again? And he repeated that, and I kind of grabbed my head, right? How can that be?
Daniel Levy, you see, is an economist. And for him, this is a mystery. So he basically hijacks the tour, starts asking all these questions. How could Coke stay a nickel for so long? And the tour guide's like, I don't know. So Daniel goes back to Emory University where he works, and he finds Andrew Young.
Daniel did kind of walk in and say that he found this crazy thing one day, and I need a research assistant. Do you want to help me out with this project? And I said, yeah, sounds really interesting. Let's do it.
The more they think about it, a single price for 70 years, the stranger it seems.
This puzzle becomes really, really amazing when you actually consider what has happened during that period. We had Great Depression.
3 wars, Spanish-American, World War I, World War II.
Competitors, including Pepsi, hundreds of competitors.
Prohibition.
Various lawsuits. And none of these things made any difference.
We're talking about basically like 1886 into the 1950s. All of these dramatic changes to the economy going on, and one constant through it all was that you could get 6.5 ounces of Coca-Cola at the fountain or in a bottle for 5 cents.
If you think that's just because Coca-Cola came up with incredible innovations to cut costs and keep the price down, this is not that story. It's a much stranger story. The tour guide, when Daniel had been grilling him, said, you should go to the Coca-Cola archives. So Daniel and Andrew do, and it has all this stuff.
Posters, calendars, novelty items.
This is Phil Mooney, the Coca-Cola Company archivist. He says the company has saved everything.
Metal signs, magazine advertising, radio and television advertising, departmental records.
The answer was definitely in there somewhere.
Files, executive correspondence.
Is the secret formula for Coke in there somewhere?
That is one thing that is not there.
So our economists start going through the archives. Mooney, the archivist, says he can't explain how nickel Coke began. It was an attempt to attract customers. The late 1800s were the days of soda fountains, and there were lots of soda fountain drinks.
They were primarily fruit-flavored drinks, oranges and grapes.
And what was the cost of the competitors?
7, 8, maybe 10 cents. Some were 5 cents. But Coke went very specifically to market itself as an affordable product.
The first sale we know is in Atlanta at a store on Peachtree Road on May 8th, 1886. I'm reading from the Coca-Cola official history here. Dr. John Stith Pemberton, a local pharmacist, produced the syrup for Coca-Cola and carried a jug down the street to Jacob's Pharmacy, where it was sampled, pronounced excellent, and placed on sale for 5 cents a glass as a soda fountain drink. Okay, that's the easy part. That's how it started. But why did Coke stay a nickel for 70 years? The two economists, Andrew and Daniel, start going deeper and deeper into the archives, reading everything they can find. Books, company histories. Andrew Young finds this story that seems to explain part of the mystery of why Coke remained priced at a nickel. It has to do with 2 lawyers from Chattanooga, Tennessee. In 1899, those lawyers pay a visit to the president of Coca-Cola. His name is Asa Candler. And they tell him they're interested in this new thing, bottles, selling drinks in bottles. They want to buy the bottling rights. And Asa Candler, the president of Coke, thinks, bottles. This is a soda fountain business.
The way the story goes is Candler just said, you're out of your mind. It's not gonna be effective. It's not gonna work. You're gonna lose all your money. And they said, well, please, give us the rights anyway. And so he just said, yeah, I'll sign this piece of paper, so to speak. I'll just sign this piece of paper that says, yeah, I'll, whenever you want it, I'll just sell you syrup, the concentrate at 90 cents a gallon.
In agreeing to do that, Candler did something companies never do. He agreed to sell his product, the syrup, to bottlers for a fixed price forever. The contract had no end date. It was a perpetual, infinite, non-ending contract. He could never charge more for his product. Why would he do that?
My best take on it is that, really, this was just trying to get two guys out of your office. I mean, anytime you've got two lawyers in your office, you probably want them to leave, right? And he's just saying, I'll sign this piece of paper if you will just please leave my office. I never thought twice about it.
This was a problem for the Coca-Cola Company because, of course, bottled drinks took off. And Coca-Cola had signed this contract, basically saying it would never raise the price of the syrup to the bottlers. Now, this does not explain why Coke stayed a nickel, because the bottlers could sell a bottle for whatever they wanted. So could the corner store, 6 cents or 7 cents or 10 cents. It's what Coca-Cola did next that kept the price at a nickel. To understand it, you have to think about the situation from Coca-Cola's perspective, because you've agreed to sell your syrup to the bottlers for a fixed price. Any increase in price at the corner store, it doesn't help you. You don't get any of the extra profit. The profit goes to the bottlers and the retailers. And in fact, if they raise the price, it hurts you. If Coke goes up to a dime, fewer people are going to buy it, and you, Coca-Cola, end up selling less syrup. So if you're Coca-Cola, you want, somehow, to keep the price down at 5 cents. What do?
Well, one thing you do is you blanket the entire nation with Coca-Cola advertising that basically has 5 cents prominently featured.
Think about how brilliant this is. Coca-Cola is taking control over the pricing away from the bottlers and the corner stores. The company can't actually put a sticker on the bottle of Coke saying 5 cents, but it can put up a huge billboard or paint the side of a building right next to the store that says, "Drink Coca-Cola, 5 cents." Again, Daniel Levy.
I'm holding here in my hand Life magazine. And Life magazine, quite old actually. This particular one is Life magazine from 13, July 10. And the back of this magazine, there is an ad of Coca-Cola, and it says, "Drink Coca-Cola at 5 cents, delicious and refreshing." The point is that since everybody was brainwashed, people saw these ads all over. And these ads included 5 cents. It was part of the commodity itself, almost. It was hard for anybody to increase the price.
Anyone selling a bottle of Coke for more than 5 cents was going to look like a jerk. But what about the soda fountains? The people who ran the soda fountains at the corner store, okay, the ads made it so they couldn't charge more than a nickel, but they could use smaller glasses or skimp on syrup. So what do you do if you're Coca-Cola? Here's Phil Mooney, the company archivist.
You provided them with the glass. That was one way that you did it. And for many years, there was actually a line drawn in the glass to show you how far to draw the syrup, and then how to fill the carbonated water to complete the drink.
That's a very clever way to control how much people are getting for a nickel.
That was the idea.
This explains part of the mystery of why Coca-Cola stayed a nickel for so long. Coca-Cola was locked into this weird contract with the bottlers. But there had to be something else going on, because in 1921, Coca-Cola managed to renegotiate the contract. The price of sugar had gone up and the company was losing money, so bottlers eventually conceded. Okay. And finally, the Coca-Cola Company was back in control. It could do whatever it wanted. After 2 decades of being shackled by a bad contract, Coke didn't have to be a nickel anymore. So what happened? It stayed a nickel anyway. Part of the reason was just that advertising campaign. It was so effective, the company had locked itself in. I mean, think how long it would take to repaint all those ads on the sides of the buildings. There were Coca-Cola trays that said 5 cents, all this stuff. Given enough time, that could have changed. But there was this one final hurdle, a hurdle about the size of a refrigerator painted bright red, the vending machine. At this point in history, vending machines aren't equipped to make change. And the Coca-Cola vending machines, they are built to take one coin, and that coin is a nickel. These machines, they were everywhere. Here's Daniel Levy.
More and more sales of Coca-Cola were made through vending machines. In 1950, to give you a sense, there were about 460,000 vending machines in the U.S. 400,000 of them belonged to Coca-Cola.
Going through the archives, Daniel and Andrew say, it is clear that the people at Coca-Cola really wanted to raise the price of Coke above a nickel. But they couldn't because of these machines that only took single coins. So the people at Coca-Cola think, if only there were another coin. There's the dime, but that would double the price. No, really, we want something in between.
So here is a clever idea what they came up with. They said, how about we ask the Treasury to issue 7.5-cent coin?
The U.S. Treasury, the government?
Yeah.
Daniel and Andrew say at one point the head of Coca-Cola asked the President of the United States, Eisenhower, for help. The two were hunting buddies. And it wasn't just Coca-Cola. This was a crisis for any business that sold through vending machines. But no luck. There has never been a 7.5-cent coin. Coca-Cola was still desperate to raise the price. So desperate, in fact, that the company came up with what Andrew Young calls a harebrained idea. This never actually saw the light of day, but there are a bunch of references to it in the archives.
We're going through some internal memos and pulled out this, stapled pack of, maybe 10 pages. So right in the front of it says single coin plan. I said, oh my God, what is this?
The single coin plan was a very clever way to charge more for a bottle of Coke without having to adjust the vending machines at all. I'll let Daniel Levy explain it.
Here is what they basically came up with. They said, okay, we are going to increase the price, but people will still be using nickel. So how they do that? They said, we are going to make every 9th bottle in the vending machine, it will be an empty bottle. They called that bottle, that empty bottle, they called it an official blank.
An empty bottle. So 8 customers in a row would pay a nickel and clunk, bottle of Coke comes out. The unlucky 9th person would put a nickel in, clink, an empty bottle comes out. Got to put in a second nickel. So sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not. On average, you end up paying slightly more than a nickel.
Average price, the effective price now is 5.625 cents.
I can imagine customers would hate that. I'd be so pissed if I put in a nickel and I got an empty bottle of Coke. Not even just a thing saying, sorry, you need to pay an extra nickel, but an actual empty bottle. It just made me angry.
I think that's one reason they abandoned this policy. But I thought it was very clever idea, though.
Vending machines that reliably make change are available by 1946. But the thing that finally undoes the nickel Coke is something else. It's inflation. The price of the ingredients start going up.
Inflation is definitely sort of the death knell for the nickel Coke. There's no doubt about that.
You might think inflation would have been a problem for Coca-Cola the whole time. But Andrew Young says there wasn't really inflation before the 1940s. Yes, prices would meander up. Sometimes sugar and the ingredients cost more, but then they'd meander back down. After the 1940s, inflation is here to stay. Prices just keep going up. What happened? The U.S. went off the gold standard. Dollars no longer had to be backed by gold.
And this is vastly simplifying things, but basically we've no longer got the golden anchor. And so at that point, the amount of money just keeps going up and up and up, which means that prices go up and up and up. Well, if prices are going up and up and up, you just can't keep your Coca-Cola for a nickel for too much longer.
So in a way, nickel Coke died because we went off the gold standard.
You can actually you can make that argument.
In 1946 and 47, you start to see Cokes on sale for more than a nickel. 6 cents, 7 cents. It's a big deal. The press reports on it. Fortune magazine in 1951 runs an article called "The Nickel Coke is Groggy," like it's unsteady, ready to fall. And it does. The last available nickel Coke seems to have been sometime in 1959. For Andrew Young and Daniel Levy, this story says a couple things. One is just that life is messier than the textbooks tell you. Yes, prices in the market generally adjust, but there are weird contracts and vending machines. And also, prices are complicated things. They get stuck, and we get stuck on them. There was a time between the contract and the vending machine when the Coca-Cola company could have changed its price, but it didn't. Coca-Cola early on said a Coke costs a nickel. It put it on billboards, ads, and painted it on buildings, and people got used to it. It felt like a promise. In a way, all prices kind of feel like that. Once we see a price on something, we have this feeling like that's some innate property of the thing, that it should not change. Prices have this psychological component. That's why companies will often shrink a product rather than raise the price, put fewer potato chips in the bag, Make the ice cream container 14 ounces instead of a pint. I'm looking at you, Haagen-Dazs. So prices get stuck. But Daniel Levy says as far as he knows, nickel coke is the longest documented sticky price in modern history. Nickel coke persisted for 70 years. And in retrospect, it wasn't a bad thing for the company. Is one legacy of this weird history that Coca-Cola is now everywhere? We think of Coke as being everywhere. Is that in part because they were stuck with a nickel price and the only way to make more money was to sell more Cokes? So they really put every effort into that?
My sense is that is a big part of it, that Coca-Cola was forced to push volume to be more profitable. It couldn't adjust its price. And so it did. It very powerfully pushed volume. At one point, there were, associated with the military, there were Coca-Cola bottling operations on every single continent except for Antarctica during World War II. All there to make sure that our soldiers could always get Coca-Cola in a bottle or at a fountain for a nickel.
Today, Cokes are larger, and they'll cost you $1 or more at the vending machine. Nickel Coke seems like a long time ago. Though Phil Mooney, the Coca-Cola archivist, pointed out this one strange thing.
In many respects, the nickel Coke is sort of still around if you do it on a per-ounce basis. Buy a 2-liter bottle for $1.29, $1.39 in the grocery store on sale, and that's pretty close to the original nickel Coke. It's very, very close.
I mentioned this to Andrew Young, the economist. He said, that's a nice way to think about it. It's still with us, just in bigger bottles.